Hello and welcome to this virtual session. We're glad you can join us today. Before we get started, there's a few housekeeping items we'd like to go over with you now. Firstly, you can resize the webinar windows to cater to your viewing preferences. You can maximise, minimise and drag the windows to your preferred viewing size. If you look at the bottom middle of your screen, you can click on the widgets that you'll need to get the most out of this virtual experience. Secondly, Microsoft specialists are on hand to answer your questions in real time. So feel free to type in your questions using the Q&A window and we'll answer them as soon as we can. Lastly, we've provided some additional resources for you to supplement your learning. You can access them by clicking on the links in this section. Without further ado, I'll hand over to our speakers.
Hello everyone, welcome to the virtual training days for Microsoft 365 Fundamentals. My name's Chelsea. Over the next two sessions as we explore the finance and operation apps inside of Dynamics 365. You might also hear these apps described as the ERP apps, but here's the cool thing. With this class, if you're looking for a new badge to add to your collection, these sessions are going to tie directly to the MB 920 exam. In fact, by attending these sessions and leveraging the learning path, at aka.ms/MB920, you're going to have everything that you need to sit for the MB920 exam. Now, for this virtual training day, we're going to be breaking up the ERP apps into two different sessions. Today, in part one, we're going to be discussing the different integration options with the finance and operation apps. We'll also explore the supply chain management tools inside of Dynamics 365. But then, in part two, we're going to dig into the finance, commerce, and project operations inside of Dynamics. We have a full agenda ahead of us, so why don't we go ahead and get started with our first module. Again, all of this material and more can be found at aka.ms/MB920. So, to kick us off, let's first discuss what an enterprise resource planning system is. You'll probably hear this commonly referred to as an ERP system. And an ERP system is a piece of software that manages an organization's financials, their supply chain, operations, as well as reporting, manufacturing, and all of the HR activities. The way that I like to think of it is that it's running the core process of your business. And typically, an ERP system will integrate with a central database so that you and your organization have insight to all of your business operations. And the best ERP systems allow your organization to analyze transactional data, which is going to give you a more streamlined process and greater efficiency. But that's why we're here today. We're here to discuss the finance and operation apps inside of Dynamics 365, which all come together to form a fully functioning ERP. And over the next two sessions, we're going to be exploring the finance app, the commerce apps, the supply chain management, and the human resources apps inside of Dynamics 365. And, I really think you're going to like this lesson. So let's just go ahead and log into the finance and operations system and take a look around. Okay, so for all of my demos today, I'm actually going to be using the sandbox environment inside of the learning path, which is great because if you wanted to go back and try these out for yourself later on, you absolutely can. So you'll notice I'm inside of the lab environment, and this is important because I'm going to not only have a company that I'm working with, but I'm also going to have the administrator access. So the username and password for that system are going to be underneath the resources tab, and you'll also have the instructions. But let's just go ahead and walk through this together. So we are inside of our finance and operations portal right now, and this is going to be my home page or one of the workspaces that I've set up. So over here on the left-hand side, we have our navigation panel, and you can see my home, any favorites, recents, workspaces, or modules, which we'll take a look at in a moment. but this is going to be probably where I'll be spending a lot of my time. You can either choose to pin it or you can have it as a flyout menu. Just because I'm working on a smaller screen, I like to have it as a flyout. In the top right-hand corner, this is where you can see what company I'm currently working with, this USMF right here. You can also switch back and forth in case you are working with multiple companies in the same app. But why don't we go ahead and go to our navigation here. I'm going to come down to modules, and I am going to come down here to my system admin. Now, this is where underneath setup, this is where I can actually go through and make any types of changes to my users or any other performance. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to come down here and we're going to go to client performance. All right, so we are in our system administration. And again, this is where if you wanted to see your users or basically manage any settings or any jobs, this is where everything can be done here. Now, we also have our setup, our other settings right here. And you can find this from your home page. This is going to be in that blue navigation bar. But this is where, if you wanted to, you can actually personalize or set any type of preferences. So if we come in here to my preferences, if I wanted to, I could rearrange any of these tiles or these tabs inside of this table right here, or this what we call workspace. I'm not going to do that, but I just wanted to show that you do have that constant customization. What we'll do is we're going to select system settings. And you can see this is where any data connectors or any settings around currency, language, as well as any type of expiration that I want to set up. This is where you and your administrator can determine what you'd like to have for your organization. This also has your data connectors, where if you wanted to store things like in your Azure Storage or your Azure Key Vault. Now this is where I can set any preferences for my account. And if I actually select preferences here, you can see what company I want to, what I want my default page, what my dashboard is, the time zone that I want it to be loaded in. So this allows me to customize my user experience. Now, if I wanted to, I can also review any other accounts that I might have set up. I have my alias, my name, any type of the network domains, my email, and then I can also customize my workflow here of basically, do I want anytime there's changes in the system or notifications, do I want an email? Now, I can tell you right now, I do not want an email for every notification, so I'm going to keep that off. But once you make any changes, you'll need to select save, but let's go ahead and go back to that home page. From the home page, I also wanted to show you the search bar right here. So if I wanted to, I can let's type in all vendors. And here we have it. We have our all vendor page. Now, this is just basically a list page. So this has basically master data that we can either read, we can make updates to, we can create data here. And if you wanted to, be careful with this option. You do have the option to delete. That's something, though, that you don't want to use lightly, though. So if we actually select one of our vendors here, so let's actually select Acme right here. This is where we can pull up any related information to that company. And so you can see, I can see their vendor account, their name, and again, because I'm logged in as an admin, I absolutely can make changes to this. But you can see based off of the setup, I have my contacts, any bank accounts, things like that. Now, if I wanted to, if you see this group 40 right here, this is where I can actually change the group to, let's say, for example, instead of our other vendors, let's actually change it to, let's change them to a service vendor. And now I can update their group type, so you can see that this has more than one personalized. Are you sure that I want to replace them? this is the nice thing about the ERP system is it's going to warn you in case you try to make any changes. But I'm not actually going to overwrite it because we're going to use this vendor later on. But if I wanted to, I can put them in different groups together. So I'm going to go ahead and say, no, I didn't make any changes, so I don't need to save. Oops, that's still on 20. So let's go ahead and change it back to 40 for our other vendors. And we're good. Just to be safe, I'm going to hit save. Just make sure that we put everything back to where it needs to be. And the last thing I just want to kind of point out as far as the basic navigation goes, over up here, we have kind of our quick links to our different Power apps, to any of our other Microsoft Office attachments, or if you need to do any refresh, or if you want to pop out this page into a new window, you absolutely can. But that's kind of the basic navigation of the finance and operation apps. We'll take a look at in a minute some of the different modules that are available. That was really just a sneak peek of the system. We're going to spend much more time later on in some of our other modules to dig in and look at the different capabilities. But what I want to do now is talk about the workspaces inside of the finance and operation apps. And the way that I want you to think of a workspace is like a personalized work center with data, reports, transactions that are all designed to increase the efficiency of your operations. And we have two different types of workspaces. And depending on the app that you're using, this is basically going to determine the types of workspaces that are available to you. So the first kind of workspace is the analytical workspace. And this is going to come with all of the finance and operation apps. And it can help generate the reports that are really kind of standard inside of Dynamics, but you are going to have customization options. On the other side, we have our mobile workspace. And these are going to be used with the mobile finance and operation apps like timesheets, expenses, as well as the advanced warehouse. And this is extremely helpful because as our workplace grows, well, we have a greater need for a mobile workspace. And within the mobile workspace, your users can sign into the app and basically run their business processes all from a mobile device. So let's actually log back into the finance and operating system and create our own workspace, and so you can see how easy it is to customize it. All right, so I am back inside of our demo environment, and I just want to show you how to customize this workspace. So one of the easiest ways that you can do that is from the home page, you can actually right-click, and then you can see that you can personalize this title page right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new workspace. And once that workspace is created, scroll down, I can see my workspace 1. And what I can do is I'm actually going to personalize. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to say personalize my workspace 1. And if I wanted to, I can change the name, but I am going to change this to Chelsea's workspace, just so it's a little bit easier for me to find. All right, so I've named it and it's automatically going to save, but if I wanted to, I can actually select personalize this page. And if I wanted to, I can move. So I'm going to select this move tool right here. And if I wanted to, I can actually select my workspace tile. And I can move, oh, I don't want to move the whole thing. Just want to move that one. So I'm going to select my workspace. Right, so if I scroll down, I should see my new workspace. Here we go, my workspace 1. And now if I wanted to, I can actually personalize it. Let's give it a new name because my workspace 1 isn't that exciting. Let's change it to Chelsea's workspace, so I know that way it's mine. All right, now if you wanted to, you could move this around, but I'm going to just leave that right here. And now we're going to go back to that all vendors page. So let's actually go back to up here to all vendors. And what I want to do is I now want to add this to my workspace. So I'm going to go to options. I'm going to select to add to workspace. And if I wanted to, I should be able to drop down and select Chelsea's workspace. There we go. That's a workspace. And how do I want it to show up? I'm going to have it show up as a tile. So I'm going to go ahead and select Configure. I'm going to say on the standard view, I'm going to go ahead and select OK. I'm going to select OK. And then I should be able to go home. And then if I scroll all the way back down here to my workspace, oh, Chelsea's workspace. There we go. We have my Chelsea's workspace. I have my standard view. So from our All Vendor page, we can have a couple different options when it comes to filtering. Underneath options, we have our advanced filter or sort. This allows you to create your own views. You can see I'm currently in my standard view. But you can also filter from the view you have set up. So if I actually scroll over here, let's say that if I wanted to filter based off of my vendor groups, I come over here to my group type. Let's say if I wanted to look only for my vendors that are have the tax authority. So I'm going to go ahead and only search for group 30. I'm going to say exactly 30. Select apply. We can see now that that's sorted that group. And let's say then if I also wanted to filter it based off of alphabetical, which I think it already is, but let's say if I wanted to do Z to A, I can set that up. And if I wanted to, I could then save this view as my own view. So let's just say that this is my group or vendor 30 list, Z to A. I'm going to go ahead and select save. And now you can see that my vendor list has been updated. And if I wanted to do any type of advanced filter and sort, what that's going to do is it's going to pull up my originally used query. So you can see I have all of the different columns that I want, and I have my criteria of 30 set here. Now, if I wanted to, I could actually save this query as a search. So let's say I didn't save the view, but it's a query that I'm running all the time. I can say that this is my vendor list, group 30. And I've now saved it. And if I click OK, you can see right here, if you look at my filter, the group is exactly 30. Now, I haven't put in any of the other information for my vendor list, but this allows my query to automatically have that group 30 in place. But as far as your views and dashboards, you have full customization over it based off of what type of workspaces you want to set up and any type of views or queries that you want to set up. So now that we know how to set up our dashboards, I want to talk about some of the options you have when it comes to exporting Dynamics F&O data into Excel. And this is key because a lot of finance professionals spend most of their time working inside of Excel. And by downloading Dynamics, and we have an add-in that you can add to Excel, you can actually use the Excel data connector to view, to update, and edit the data all within your Excel workbook. And this is extremely helpful when it comes to working with the data entities inside of Excel. And if you're not familiar with the data entities, they're really just simply objects inside of the data model. For example, I might have a vendor entity that has a total of 17 tables and data sources that have been combined into a single entity. So when you open that data entity inside of Excel, it's really easy to view and edit all of that data. And Excel is just one of the many different Microsoft Office integration capabilities. Through the use of the data connector, you can also maintain all of your security permissions since it uses the existing Dynamics 365 OAuth security protocol. And what this means is that your data cannot be downloaded by someone who doesn't already have the correct permissions in place. But the connector just doesn't let you download data. After you're making any changes to an exported file, you can actually publish it back inside Dynamics, and then you can create an Excel workbook as a template by using the workbook designer. And honestly, one of my other favorite integrations with the connector is with the one with Microsoft Outlook. So when you're using the Outlook connector, you can actually sync your Outlook contact tasks, your appointments, and everything else with Dynamics. And there's a built-in wizard that will create and configure the relationship between the user, the employee, and their Outlook account. And that way, if there's any new activity that's been created in Dynamics, it's going to show you how to create that task in Outlook automatically. However, as we look at Excel, that's just one of the ways you can export your data and extract insights. But Dynamics 365 has a built-in tool to create really rich and interactive reports that can be integrated into your application workspace. And all of these graphics and all of these visuals, they're supported by Power BI. But the real power of Power BI, no pun intended, is that you can have multiple data sources. So let's say, for example, you can include a simple sheet with a collection of data from your on-premise data warehouse because you can connect all of these data sources together. You get to build that visualization to illustrate the importance of the topics, and then you just share it with the rest of the organization. So on the screen, you can actually see a Power BI dashboard, and it's pulling data from the Salesforce, Explorer, Access, Excel, SQL, as well as third-party things like MailChimp. And it's all going to combine with the data that you have inside of your Dynamics 365 business applications. Now, there is one other integration option that I want to discuss with you. And if you are leveraging the Microsoft Office suite of tools, you might already be using SharePoint to store and organize and really share any documents. And any information within SharePoint can actually be accessed from any device that has a web browser. So if you're using Edge or Explorer, Chrome, or Firefox, you have access to your documents. And what this means is you can add your company's SharePoint site as a location for your model-driven apps. And this makes it nice and easy when it comes to working with things like Word, Excel, and all of your different PowerPoint files. But you know what? This is just the tip of the iceberg. And we're going to have the rest of today, plus our second session, to really dig our teeth into the finance and operation apps inside of Dynamics 365. But today, I just want to focus on the supply chain management module, which is a beast. So how about this? Why don't we go ahead and take a quick stretch and bio break and make sure that we are fresh and ready for module 2. So how does a 10-minute break sound? Sound good? Okay, I'll see you right back here in 10 minutes. break. I hope that you were able to stand up and at least stretch, because I know with these virtual training days, it can be hard to sit in front of a screen for long periods of time. And that's why we're actually going to take another break about halfway through this module. But you know what? Let's go ahead and get into our first application of the session, and we'll be looking at the supply chain management tools. And the main benefit of Dynamics 365 supply chain management is that you're going to have an overview of your inventory, your warehouse, the manufacturing process, and the services and any logistics with full analytics that can help you make informed business decisions. So let's go ahead and dig in and discuss some of these products. Now, product information is the backbone of supply chain as well as commerce. And you need a centralized way to store it so that way it's accessible for all parts of your company. Now, there are two different types of products that you'll be responsible for keeping track of in your organization. You'll need to track items. These are the things that you're using to sell or things that are used to manufacture that item. And then we have our product. And this is usually a service, it can be quantified like through an hourly service or basically something that's there to support the process of manufacturing. But you could actually break these two different product types into what we call product or subproducts. Now, first we have a product. This is something that's unique. This is really the core of our product and it doesn't vary. So think of things like a screwdriver or a carton of milk or even an engine. But then we have the product master is what we use to create things called product variants. So the product master, this might be a general shirt. We know what kind of material we want, we know what we want to make it out of, and we know how to make it. But with the product variant, we can make that exact same shirt, but it ranges in different sizes, like let's say from extra small to extra large. And what happens if we offer it in 14 different colors? The product master is giving us that base plan, but the variants have, variances in them. And you need an easy way to store all of this information. And here's the nice thing. If you're a large organization or even a smaller organization, Dynamics 365 can help you maintain all of the details over all of your different products. And so what you're going to want to have is your designers, they're going to need to create the product dimensions. This is going to let us know what is needed for each variant. So what are the colors of the shirts that you're offering? Or what are the different sizes? Or, are there different styles like V-necks or crew cut? You can then think of all of the variants, with the different combinations. So for example, maybe you have a small red V-neck shirt, a medium red V-neck shirt, and a large red V-neck shirt. And, I kind of think you see the pattern where I'm going with this. But once you have all your variants, you can actually set up how they are stored inside of your warehouse, because different shirt sizes or different materials may have different storage needs. And if you wanted to, depending on the product, you can even assign serial numbers to products so that way they're easy to trace for things like quality assurance or warranties. Now, I don't want you worrying about and thinking that this is a complicated process. Let me actually log into the supply chain app and I'll show you how easy it is to configure a new product. All right, so we are still in that lab environment. And what I want to do is I want to come over here to that left-hand side navigation pane, and we're going to go to our modules. We did this earlier, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to come down to product information management. And then what we're going to do is underneath products, we are looking for our released products. Because what we're going to do is we are going to create a new item for some cabinets that we are purchasing from a vendor. All right, so these are all the released products that I currently have, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new product. So I'm going to come up here to the top navigation bar and select New. And I want to make sure that my product type is an item. So there we go. My product subtype should be product, and so everything looks good here. But now for our tracking dimension group, I'm going to select none. Now you can see here, I only have a couple required components, and this is something you can customize as a system admin. But what I'm going to do is under the product number, I'm going to enter in GTL 007. Oops. GTL. All right. And then in the product name here, I'm going to name this cabinet. And this is where I am now going to enter in the measurement for that inventory. So we can see that the inventory unit is going to be an each, same thing with purchase and sales unit. But if I drop down, you can see that there's different units I can pick from. In this case, I'm going to use the eaches. Now, if I scroll down just a little bit more, we can look at things like the sales taxation. For the sales tax group, what I am going to do is I am going to select all. And then same thing for my purchase taxation. All right. Now for my purchase price, what I can do now is this is where I can put in how much I am purchasing it for, and I am going to purchase it for $30. And I am going to then set my sales price for $30 as well. All right. Now, I do have some reference groups here, and this is where if I wanted to figure out how I wanted to calculate my inventory, you see that FIFO and LIFO. I'm going to go ahead and take the FIFO approach, so the first in, first out. And then for my item group, I'm going to put it for TV and video, because these are cabinets for our AV products. And finally, for the storage dimension group, this is where I can add in my site warehouse. And this is letting me know where I'm going to store it. And so this is going to be basically the product. This is all of the information that's going to be loaded about that particular product that I am adding to my warehouse or into my inventory. So I'm going to select OK. And I want to make sure that my product is finalized. So we can see that cabinet right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm under this product tab right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select validate. And you can see that all of my fields have been validated and my product's been added. So now that you have your product set up, you may need to adjust how you sell your products. Because think about it. You might need to offer different prices to a vendor who is purchasing your products to resell it. Or, that case, you might want to offer them a wholesale discount. Or maybe you have a particular product that you're trying to clear out of the warehouse and make way for version 2. In that case, you may want to offer a discount on it. No matter how you decide to manage your prices or your discounts, there's an easy way to control different pricing and different discount structures. And you can create all sorts of different discounts from the sales and marketing menu inside of the supply chain app. You can add it to a price for a specific product, or you can create a line discount on a quote or a sales order for a group of items. And if you wanted to, you could even add a multi-line discount. But you know what? If that's not enough, you could even just add a flat discount off a total amount of an order. And if you actually look here on the screen, you can see it's really just a simple check for which different customer groups have access to that pricing. But I do want to pause here before I move on to our next area, is that I am going to be kind of jumping from topic to topic relatively quickly. And, the purpose of this class is not to teach you the supply chain process itself, but more what we'll be discussing is the tools available inside of Dynamics. So our next area, we're going to actually skip ahead and we're going to cover the warehouse and inventory management, because you're gonna have to manage your products, the variants, and you need to know how you're gonna keep track of everything in that process. And that's why I want to start with a purchase order, or more commonly, you might hear it referred to as a PO. And a PO it's a document, and it's basically an agreement to buy a good or service. But this is a key document that's going to come into play when we look at some of the different finance tools. And, we're actually going to create one in the system here in a minute, but there are 3 different types of POs that you can create. You can have a journal, which think of this more as like a draft PO. There really isn't any impact to your warehouse counts. It's just a working PO that hasn't been finalized yet. And then we have our traditional purchase order that basically this is a confirmed order. And that is the most common type of PO. But we also have a return order or a return to vendor, or you might hear it as an RTV. It has just a couple different names, and I'm sure there's more depending on your industry. But this is what's issued when products have been returned. There's a couple other inventory topics, or related documents that I think that are important for you to understand. Your warehouse managers and anyone working in the warehouse need to know what to do when a new product arrives. For example, what happens if it needs to be refrigerated? You need to have those inbound instructions to let your team know what to do with it. And this is often going to be paired with cross-docking, which basically is a process that tells your warehouse manager how much of the product needs to be put away instead of being staged for any type of additional processing. But I promised you earlier that we're going to create a purchase order, so let's go ahead and log into the system now. Okay, so we are still inside of our lab environment. You can see I'm still in my Contoso Entertainment Systems, also as the USMF. And just a reminder, this is inside of that learning path. But to create a purchase order, what I'm going to do is that's going to be underneath my modules. So I'll come to the navigation bar, drop down underneath modules, and purchase orders live under procurement and sourcing. So I'm going to select procurement and sourcing, and then I'm going to expand this menu right here for purchase orders. And I want to select all purchase orders. All right, very similar to when we were looking at my all vendors list earlier. It's just the difference is this is going to be all of my purchase orders. And to create one, I'm going to just come up here to the top and select new. And that's one of the things you'll notice as you go through. The interface is pretty similar from module to module, from application to application. So to create that purchase order, the first thing that I need to do is I'm going to need to select a vendor account. Now I'm going to select an existing one that I already have. So it's going to be US-101. And basically what happens is when I select that vendor, you can see that everything's getting pulled in from that vendor record. So we have the address, the invoice account, any of our delivery terms, and basically anything else that we've associated with that vendor account is going to be pulled in with here. And if I make changes to the vendor account, it will also update all of the purchase orders with this. So I'm going to go ahead and let that go. And now I have my vendor account and the name associated with it. Now, I do want to come down here. You can see all that information's been populated, but let's take a look at our general. So this is where I have my purchase order number, the purchase type, invoice, all of that. But what I want to come down here is I want to come down to my storage dimensions. So essentially, you can see I have all of my site options here. Now, this is basically saying where these goods or these services, whatever I'm ordering, where they need to go. So by default, the delivery address is going to be listed. But if I wanted to specify, to this vendor where I want this to be delivered, I can choose that here. All right, so that's the site menu. Now, if we wanted to pick a date, this is where we can actually select the date itself for when I want the delivery to occur or when do I need the items by. Now, if we come down here to our administration, and I actually go down here to the orderer, this might be helpful if you have multiple contacts or people who might be working with that specific vendor. So you can see here, these are going to be the typical people, you can see both employees and contractors within my organization who have the correct permissions to place purchase orders. So it's going to be a a permissions type thing. So I'm just go ahead and leave it cancel that and leave it as Julia. All right. So everything looks good, and I'm going to go ahead and create this purchase order. Okay, so our purchase order has been created, but if I need to work with the purchase order itself, what I can do is I can switch from the lines to the header. And when I do that, that gives me all of the information that I can make changes to. So I'm going to come back to my purchase order lines, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm actually going to select my purchase order lines right here. And so this basically allows me to make changes to the lines itself. And what I want to do is I'm going to actually scroll through, and from the display, I'm going to select dimensions. And this is an important thing that you may want to add to your purchase order because your products, and remember all those different variants we discussed, can vary based off of size, based on color, or even the style itself. And so you want to make sure that you are set up to actually store those dimensions, especially, a shirt may be small, but if we're talking large pieces of equipment, you want to make sure either that site or the warehouse is ready for it. And, if there are any type of products that are going to have batches or serial numbers associated with them, you're just going to want to be able to have that dimension as part of the purchase order, so that way everything's easily tracked. So what I'm going to do is I am actually going to then come over here from the product dimensions. I'm going to select color. And this is where, if I wanted to, I have the color, I have the site, I have the warehouse, everything else looks good. So I'm going to select OK. Now this is where, if I wanted to, I could just enter in an item number that I'm wanting to add to my purchase order. So I'm going to select item number, and I'm going to type in T0004. All right. And the nice thing is I could absolutely drop down and select, choose this from a drop-down list, but I think it's a lot faster to search by that item number. So I have the product name, the item group, the way it needs to be purchased. So I'm going to go ahead and select enter to add it to my line. And now, because I did say I wanted to select the color, if I scroll over here to the right, you can see the color is now required. So let's see all the different color combinations there are. All right, you know what? I think I am going to let's choose silver. Silver sounds pretty. And as far as my quantity, I want 10 of them. All right, now there are some other pieces of information that you can include, like the unit price, and if you have any discounts or anything else associated with that, you can then add those in here. But basically, everything else looks good. I don't think I'm going to make any other changes here. So I am going to go ahead and just make sure everything else looks good. And if I see here at the line details, I come down here and I select delivery. This is where I can set up the delivery date. Basically, the delivery date is going to be automatically inherited from the purchase order itself, but you can always change that if you need to. But that's pretty much all of the different things that you can do when it comes to the purchase order, but it's going to vary from organization to organization. So now that we've created the purchase order, I wanted to explain what happens after an order has been placed. So after an order has been placed, the items in the order need to be picked in the warehouse, and then they need to be packed for shipping. An output order is going to be considered the advanced picking function that links the sales orders and the transfer orders with the picking list. And when the picking lists are generated from either sales orders or transfer orders, they're all going to be automatically created. Now, what a picking list has is a one-to-one relationship with the shipment. The transfer order shipment, or the sales order packing slip, can be processed from the shipment itself. Now, you have the option to set up outbound rules which define how the program should handle the outbound process. And you can use these rules to control the shipment process. You could actually use the rules to control during which stage in the process a shipment can be sent out. You can also automatically reserve inventory for a specific sales order if you want. And when you do this, that reserved inventory cannot be withdrawn from the warehouse for any other orders unless it's that reserved instance. And, it's going to stay locked unless that inventory reservation is canceled. Ooh, and you know what? I do want to mention, you can only place reservations on stocked products, so you can't do rain checks with it. But the inventory that's assigned to an order, your warehouse team is going to need to pick it. And picking can happen in a few different ways. For example, you could use something called cluster picking. And this is where you have workers who are picking all the items from a single location in a warehouse, but it's for multiple orders. And we'll get into the items before moving on to the next area that go along with picking. But the reason I bring this up is that it's helpful in cutting down the potential running back and forth in a warehouse. And, another thing that's important inside of your warehouse is inventory levels, because there is an extremely fine line of understocking and overstocking. And managing the warehouse replenishment means that you are ensuring that each picking location basically has the optimal quantity of products for a smooth and efficient picking process. And if you have an empty picking slot, that basically means that you have an empty shelf on a location in your store, which can lead to a lost sale and a lost revenue. So for your warehouse, if you fail to replenish properly, it can lead to things like inventory shortages or an inaccurate stock count, and basically you have a reduction in your service levels. So in order to maintain those inventory levels, Dynamics 365 has two different tools that can help your warehouse managers. First, we need a way to count the inventory that we have inside of a specific location in the warehouse. So you can create something called a journal with the warehouse name, the location, and all the item counts that are there. And basically, after you have an initial count, you can view the inventory transactions that either add or remove inventory. Typically, companies have multiple shipments and multiple receipts of inventory every single day, and these movements are constantly changing the on-hand inventory status. So the mobile workspace for on-hand inventory is going to provide you with an instant view of the on-hand status across all of your different facilities. And you can also see current material reservations and basically any unreserved on-hand inventory that you have. If you wanted, you can enter the item numbers and look up that on-hand inventory, and basically you can do searches for all of your on-hand products or product variants. Okay, so we've looked at the picking process and we've looked at the inventory process, but I want to quickly touch on how you can configure the warehouse to meet your needs. And because the way that you set up your warehouse physically, that also needs to be represented in your warehouse management system. Like, let's say, for example, in a warehouse, there might be some equipment that can help workers move the products around. Think of things like forklifts or ladders. And your warehouse staff need to be able to put away items or pick items or perhaps move them from one location to another inside of that warehouse. Some other common, things that warehouse staff need to do is they need to rearrange products to make space within a particular location in case there are any type of new arrivals. And so that means that your workers are going to be walking up and down aisles to pick or put away all of those items for the orders. Now, the warehouse management system inside of Dynamics 365 Supply Chain makes it simple to set up your warehouse layout to help meet those changing needs. So that way you can optimize your warehouse efficiency. And there are so many different configuration templates that are available. And, depending on your scenario, you might find them useful. And so when we look at how you can configure your own warehouse, you're going to have to enable a few different things. First, you'll need to set up a zone group. This is basically a grouping of zones, think of physical locations inside of the warehouse. And each of those locations, we call them zones. So then what you have is you have location profiles. And these basically explain what can be stored in a particular area or if there's a capacity for that area. The last thing that you'll need to set up, and this is the smallest level, it's a location. This is how you are tracking the on-hand inventory and where it can be picked from inside of the warehouse. And with all of these settings, you can set up that's specific to your warehouse. So, for example, there might be areas where you can only have a certain type of forklift or a certain type of ladder. Or if your company has both production and finished goods within the same facility, you may want to have a single warehouse inside of supply chain management, but then you have two different operations by creating two different zone groups. And inside of Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management, the warehouse management tool gives you visibility into your shipping, your inventory, and your receiving. And you can integrate the warehouse management with other business processes like transportation or manufacturing or quality control, purchase, transfer, sales, or even returns. And with warehouse management, really where it's helpful is that you can make sure that you're not running out of stock and you're not overstocking your shelves. So how about this? Why don't we go ahead and log into the supply chain app and let's go ahead and create our own warehouse.
Okay, so when it comes to creating a warehouse, it's actually a very simple process that can save you a lot of headache up front. So like usual, we're going to come up here to our navigation and we are going to come down here to our inventory. I know my alphabet. Inventory management. And then we are going to come over here on the right-hand side. We have setup. And then we're going to come to our inventory breakdown and specifically our warehouses. So this is where we can see all of our different warehouses that we have currently associated with our USMF company. Guess what we're going to do? We are going to create a new one. All right, so new right here at the top in that navigation bar. And for our warehouse, let's just name it 101. We'll have warehouse number 101 and let's make an overflow warehouse. All right. As far as the site, where this is going to be something that we would have created in the past, let's say that this is for our home foam production. And so you can see that's going to type in the site name. And then if I want to see all of my different location names, come down here. This is where I can choose to add in things like my aisle as well as my rack options. All right, so if I wanted to have aisles or racks, all of that can be done here. So let's just say I want to add in an aisle and we can see the location. Now, I'm going to come back up here to my warehouses. And when I select my warehouse, I have this thing called the location wizard. So I'm going to open up this location wizard. And this wizard is what can help me set up all the different locations inside of my warehouse. And it walks you through based off of what you've selected up to this point. So let's say I just wanted to keep, maybe I'm doing everything except for my, I'm doing outbound, picking locations, and bulk locations. Okay, it needs an inventory aisle. Okay, one more time. I don't know why. I don't like this half, so we're gonna do it one more time. All right, and so this wizard is what's gonna help you create all the different locations inside of your warehouse. So based off of what you previously selected, it's going to recognize like, hey, you said you wanted aisles, or hey, you wanted shelves. So I'm gonna go ahead and just I'm not going to get into a whole lot of customization as far as this goes, but I just wanted you to see that this is going to help you create your aisles. And then if you wanted to change the aisle numbers, you get to name them. And then as far as your docks, how many docks do you want to create? So you have one for your inbound docks, and you also have them for your outbound docks. And so you can just edit all the way through any of your picking locations. And then again, if you wanted to specify the depth of your locations. And so this is really important because depending on your product sizes, you can only store certain products in certain shelves or certain aisles. So this allows you to edit it. Then how are you creating your bulk locations? The sizes for those. Again, what you want to name it, the location of them. And now, there you go. And there you go. Everything's been created, and we have Warehouse 101 that we can then use to direct product to or store product in.
As you can see, the warehouse management system inside of supply chain management gives you flexible ways to define your warehouse layout to meet the changing needs, so that way you have optimized your warehouse efficiency. I do want to spend a little bit more time on how you can manage the shop floor based off of the type of product that you're storing, or even based off of your own manufacturing strategy. However, we've been going for a little bit, so why don't we go ahead and take a quick break, and that way when we come back, we can pick up with the rest of Module 2, covering Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management. I hope you were able to get a quick stretch in and maybe a fresh cup of coffee, because we're going to pick right up where we left off with Module 2 and continue our discussion around the capabilities inside of Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management. So inside of the manufacturing industry, you're going to hear the term QA, or quality assurance. And quality assurance involves the product testing and basically how you manage non-conforming material. And basically a non-conformance is any type of problem with that product. Now, the quality assurance process can help guarantee a high level of product quality inside of your supply chain. And these processes can also help optimize the supply chain process and basically increase customer satisfaction. And quality management can help you manage the turnaround times when you're dealing with things like non-conforming products. Basically, no matter where those non-conformances come in. And if you do the setup correctly, you can basically link diagnostic results with things like correction tasks. And then the system can schedule tasks automatically to basically help correct those problems and prevent them from happening in the future. And so when you are setting up quality assurance inside of supply chain management in Dynamics 365, you can generate quality orders for various business processes, and this can be things like events or any other type of condition you want to set up. And when you set it up, you can have it cover a specific item, a group of items, or all the items in the process. But I want to move on to is the costs inside of manufacturing, because your company needs to be able to calculate all the costs that go into creating a product. I mean, just think about it. You have things like labor, the materials for the product, any surcharges, and really just the cost of doing business. And inside of Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management, there are different cost management tools and cost sheets that can help you calculate the total cost of production. You can include things like the material consumption, or you can set up things like cost categories for surcharges or any other indirect cost that you might incur. And this is not a finance class, but I do want to make sure that you understand the two components of cost management. So first, we have what's called standard cost. This is also sometimes referred to as inventory costing. But this is where your company assigns a cost to a product. And these costs include things like incidental fees, like storage, administration, or market fluctuations. And generally accepted accounting principles, or what we call GAAP principles, use standard accounting rules to ensure that the companies that are using this, they're not overstating what their costs really are. But inventory costing is part of an inventory control technique, and proper inventory control within supply chain can help reduce the total inventory costs, and it's going to help you determine how much product a company should carry. Now, all of this information helps your organization decide if the needed margins that you're going to need to assign to each product or each product type. But here's the thing. In accounting, there's a difference in what we call actual cost and the inventory cost. Because if your company is going to consider the value of the inventory as what they paid for it, whereas when we look at the cost of goods, this is what they can actually sell it for. And there's three different ways that you can calculate the actual cost for your inventory. You have what's called first in, first out, or you might hear it called as FIFO. And this is where your company is selling the product that they brought in first. Whereas LIFO, or last in, first out, is where you were selling the inventory you brought in last. And then we have a thing called weighted average, is basically where you average the cost of the inventory and how much you sell over a period of time. So let's actually talk about this as an example. I own a candle shop. And let's say at the beginning of the year, I have 50 candles in stock. And it cost me $500 to make them. Now, if I'm selling them for $15 a piece, and, it's all great. But when I go to buy product to make 50 more, it then costs me $600. And you can see, depending on if I sell my older inventory first, the actual costs will be less. Versus the newer inventory, it's going to be more expensive. The actual cost is going to increase. Now, these costing methods do not necessarily represent the actual physical flow of the goods. They're really going to be more cost-based that I'm assigning to my company's inventory. But you know what? We've made it through that mini costing lesson. So why don't we go into more detail about some of that finance and accounting later on in Module 3? But I actually want to switch gears and take a look at the different manufacturing types. So here's the thing. Different products need a different production strategy. And each strategy needs a different workflow. And today we're going to be looking at 3 different types of manufacturing, and we'll actually kind of talk about like one combination type as well. So first, let's talk about discrete manufacturing. And that's pretty much any item that's going to be sold in a store. I want you to think of this as a type of product, and it's distinct. So that one product is a single distinct unit. And, for example, like if we were to say something is non-discrete, I can divide it into different sections. So a non-discrete item would be oil. I can divide it out into different sizes and different amounts. But let's say if I have a teapot, I can't divide that into 2 halves because it's considered a single unit. So discrete manufacturing can be characterized by unit production, where units can be produced with, that are really complex and, maybe you're just doing a small quantity, or you can do things that are really mass produced, but maybe a little bit less complex. So it can be anything from aircrafts to nuts and bolts. I'm going to skip over lean manufacturing though, and we'll come back to it, but I want to come back to process manufacturing, because a lot of people get process and discrete manufacturing mixed up. Process manufacturing, it's going to rely on creating formulas or like recipes to create the product. Whereas discrete manufacturing, we're putting parts together in a way to produce that distinct item. Now, discrete manufacturing creates products that are differentiated by individual units, where process manufacturing does not. Discrete manufacturing produces individual units like smartphones, where the process manufacturing is creating things like salt, oil, or water if you wanted. So it's important that you keep those 2 separate. But let's go ahead and loop back and talk about lean manufacturing. And this is actually lean manufacturing was developed by the Toyota Motor Company, and it was called the Toyota Production System. And the word lean here is used in the sense of thin, basically meaning that you have no waste, or you're taking out the elements in the production process that aren't adding value to the overall finished product. So when we say lean thinking, is we're trying to think of ways to do more and more on less and less. And this can be used in both discrete manufacturing and process manufacturing, since it's really more of a philosophy rather than a product plan. And so that actually brings us to Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management, because it can deliver a unified or a mixed mode manufacturing to support all your manufacturing strategies. Each component of information that you have in your production order, you can modify it or you can copy it and basically make the adjustments to meet the requirements of your manufacturing facility. So whether your organization produces items that are made to order or made to stock, or maybe you're engineering to order, Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management can help you with your manufacturing strategies. Now, although each company's manufacturing processes are unique, depending on the nature of production, the environment, all of the core elements that are going to be used in the core production module inside Dynamics are pretty similar to one another. So when you're starting the manufacturing process, you're going to need to create a production order. And this is basically a request to start the manufacturing of a certain quantity of items that are specific to that order itself. And all of the information that is associated with the item that you're going to be producing is inside of that production order. Now, that production order is going to contain either a list of raw materials from the bill of materials, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, or it can have things like a formula that are going to basically have all of the co-products and byproducts. And it's also going to have the resources that are going to be used, maybe any type of routes it'll take, and the operations. So inside of Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Production Control Module, it allows your manufacturing facility to change production orders so that way they're streamlined to your specific production requirements. But before we start creating a production order in the system, let's actually discuss a few of those different elements. So the first thing is your resources. This is going to be anything that's used to create, produce, or deliver your goods or services. But this does not include the materials used in the process. So think of this like a machine, a tool, it could be actual people, or a location. Now, when you break down the resources into different types, this can help you manage the utilization and capacity of each. And it can help you make sure that you have the right employees on the jobs. It's going to make sure that you have the right tools available. And actually, for machines and tools, you can actually track the utilization to make sure that the best one is being used for the job, and you can track capacity. So with the resources and resource types, we also have resource capabilities. And this describes what each resource can do. So let's say when you schedule a resource for a job, the requirements of each job and the operations are going to be matched against the capabilities of that available resource. In the production control module of Dynamics 365, there's a task guide that will help you create a resource capability and then assign it to a resource. But earlier, I actually mentioned something called the bill of materials. And this is probably the most important document in your company, or at least when it comes to manufacturing. But before you can produce any product, you need to know all the different components needed to create it. And you need to know how many of each of them you're going to need. The bill of materials is going to have the ingredients, the components, the parts, the raw materials, everything that's required to make a single finished product. So the bill of materials is going to define the materials that are needed. The resource defines where the item is produced, and then the route is going to determine the sequence of events to build that finished products. And then the last thing that we have is the operations. And these are going to be the tasks or the work processes that are being put together with the route to basically produce a specific product. But you know what? That was a lot. And I think it might be easier if I just show you how to create a production order. So let's go ahead and log back into the system.
All right, so to create our production order, guess where we're going to go? We're going to come up here to our navigation bar. In our modules, in this case, we're going to look for our production control. It makes it nice and easy to find, alphabetical. And we are going to go to our production orders, and we're going to check out all of them. Now, in order to create a new production order, I feel like you know what the routine is at this point, but we're going to come up here to the top, and ooh, we don't have a plus sign this time. It's just a tab that says New Production Order. And now we'll start entering in the information for our production order. Now, for the production order itself, you can see it's automatically generated a number, but now what we need to include is the item number. You can always search for it, but I know the item number that I want D001. And it makes it real easy for me to find it. It's a mid-range speaker. Go ahead, select. And added that item number in. Now, as far as the production goes, what kind of delivery do I want? So I'm going to say from the type, I am going to change my delivery. Right, so I'm going to go scroll down for production, and I am going to change the delivery date. So let's change this, let's actually get it closer to when we want it. So let's say that we are looking to get it for December. Let's just say 2024. We're planning ahead. So let's say that I want it, the 16th of December, 2024. And this is basically telling my team when do I want this production order to end, so that way everything can be delivered in time. So this is really how we're going to schedule the rest of the process. Now, as far as the quantity goes, let's say that I am ordering 20. All right, and then under our bill of materials and our route, basically this is what's automatically going to populate based off of the route number and the bill of materials for what I've selected. But you can always manually change them if you wanted to. Just know that you're going to have to update those routes. Once that's good, I'm going to select create. And that production order has then been created.
But as we wrap up this module, I want to chat a little bit about master planning. This is what allows your company to figure out what you have in raw material and what you need to order to meet your company goals. And the way that master planning works is it looks at what materials you currently have on hand and then compares it to what you need to produce your products. And not only that, it takes all of that into consideration, but it's also looking at your inventory, your transactions, your sales, purchasing, production, and all of the transfer orders, and all of that is going to go into the master plan. So your warehouses, the forecasts, calendars, coverage groups, product tables, all of these different things are going to impact the master plan inside of the supply chain management module. And this master planning is really going to be focused on three main processes. You have your forecast planning, the 1 or 2 master planning strategy, and the item coverage setting. So when you are forecasting in Dynamics, there are 2 different methodologies that you can choose from. We have the supply forecast and the demand forecast. And the supply forecast allows you to plan for items that need to be procured through your sourcing departments to basically supply the materials that you need to operate. The supply forecast is used to help your company drive planned purchase orders within master planning. And this is going to help your procurement team by showing them what they should expect to order, basically based on the variety of the different factors. We look at things like past performance, contracts with vendors, or any type of projected need. The demand forecast, on the other hand, allows you to look at the demand from the customers. Typically, the demand forecast is used by a company to generate a planned production order within master planning. So the demand forecast helps your sales team provide data to the production and inventory teams on basically what the expected demand will be. But the next one that we have inside of master planning is the 1 or 2 master plan strategy. Businesses that take a long time to come up with a plan, this can be for a number of different reasons, but sometimes they may want a static plan. This means that they're running, their planning process every so often. So once a week, they do all of the aggregate and future productions, and they do all of their purchase planning based on that static plan. And because of this, they can be certain in the planning process of what has driven requirements. Now, if you have periodic plans, but the situation constantly changes, you have a second plan, which is what's called the dynamic plan. This plan, what it does, it takes into account the transactional movements, and you can run updates from production on the dynamic plan without impacting that static plan. So elements like the net requirements, all of those are going to be default to the dynamic plan and shows the current situation with the orders and transactions that have processed since you ran that static plan last. And what this does is this gives you insight to see the current situation in the moment. But every time master planning runs, it's examining the settings on the items that you specified in the plan. And not all items need to be included. You could have a different set of items that run each and every time. For instance, one day you might have all the manufactured items that are run, and on the other day you might have all the purchased items that run together. But every item is going to be calculated for the orders, basically to make sure that you have the correct item coverage. And these settings are going to determine basically how that calculation works and how it's applied. And typically, when there are coverage groups, the same coverage groups that you set up can actually be applied to multiple items, helping cut down on that configuration time. Master planning inside of Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management, it can be confusing for those who are learning to use it for the first time inside of your business operations. But what I want you to know is the main purpose of master planning is to gauge whether a product is needed to meet your sales forecast demands, and then it's taking that information and it's using that to plan for purchase orders or production orders or transfer orders to help meet those demands. But with master planning wrapped up, we're on to our final lesson of Module 2. And I wanted to wrap up this section by discussing the process of, maintaining physical assets in your organization and that asset lifecycle. Now, your company's assets are vital when it comes to your supply chain, whether it's fixed assets like buildings or machinery, or it could be moving assets like shipping vehicles and containers. Dynamics 365 Asset Manufacturing Module allows your company to have real-time access to your maintenance costs without having to collect that data, but it's allowing you to analyze it and then make decisions based on, up-to-date information. And asset management allows you to efficiently manage and carry out those tasks that are related to things like servicing all the different equipment in your company. Things like, your machines or your equipment that's used for production. And so when it comes to managing your assets, you can choose to track them based off of their physical location. So think of places like warehouses or yards or even buildings. So if you actually look at this example I have up here on your screen, you can see production line 1 as a functional location that's creating the labels for the jars, and it's attaching them using a machine. In this case, that machine is our asset. But if you look at our second functional location, this is where they're making salsa. And in that location, we can have sub-locations called work centers with different assets like things like, conveyor belts or machines to cook the salsa and whatever else is needed. But it doesn't always have to be based off of a location. If you wanted, you could choose to manage your assets by customer. So let's say, for example, you have a customer and they have 2 different offices. And if you actually look at the image that we have here on the screen, each office has their own work center that has printers, printer trays, power supplies, and a number of different assets that go along with it. And it's important to know what assets you have, where they're located, or what customer they belong to. Because depending on your business, you may have to make repairs or perform some type of maintenance. And when that does happen, a great way to keep track of the work that has been done and what needs to be done is what we call work orders. And a work order is what we use inside of Dynamics 365 to collect information about the asset, any work that's been done in the past or work that needs to be done. Really think it's any type of information that's pertinent to that particular asset. So let me actually log into the system and show you how you can create a work order for a machine.
Now, it's really important for you to remember that these work orders are what's going to tell your field technicians what they need to do at the job, what asset they're working on, what location do they need to go to. Plus, it also tells your schedulers or your dispatch team who's the right technician to send out, what tools do they need, all of that. So in order to create that work order, what we're going to do is we're going to actually come into our modules. We're going to come to Asset Management. We'll select Setup, then come over to Maintenance Requests, and then we're going to look at our different lifecycle states. Now, as far as this is where that In Progress tab, this is where if we wanted to make any type of changes, this is like, let's actually do a little bit of an edit here. So instead of creating a new one, let's actually edit this. And so we could actually change, let's come here to General. So one, do we want to make this an active statement? Yes, we absolutely could. But when it's in progress, do we want to create a work order? So I'm going to allow them to create a work order when you have a maintenance request in the in progress stage. So this will change to yes. I'm going to select Save. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my navigation bar that's saved. Come back to our asset management. And then I want to tuck this guy in. So we are in our asset management and we're going to look up our workspaces and then we're going to do our maintenance request management. Now this is where I could actually create, so you can see all of my maintenance requests that I currently have, but let's go ahead and create a new maintenance report. All right, so the maintenance request number is automatically going to be updated. What type is this? Is this a breakdown? Is it a safety request? Is it corrective? You could also add in your own request types, but this is a corrective request. And then from the description, let's just say that we have noise in the metal detector. Right. And then as far as our functional location goes, I know what the functional location is, so I'm going to go ahead and do pp-02-02. Now, oops, should be a dash. Now, you could absolutely use that filter if you'd like, but since I know it, it makes it a lot faster to pull it up. And then as far as the asset goes, remember every asset's going to have a number associated with it, that record number. And so in this case, it's the MD201. We can see that this is our metal detector. So we're getting some weird number in it. Now the service level, you're going to have all your different service levels that go along with it. So if you actually expand this out, you can see, is it a critical, an urgent, a high, a low, or medium? And this already has, we're going to say that this is a medium. You know, it's definitely going to impact our work. But now what we have is we have our service level, let's say the fault symptom, you know, what's going on. I'm going to just say it's excessive noise. And then, as far as the fault area, we're going to put it as electrical. All right, so I think we have everything here. I can see who it was started by. I'm going to click OK. But, ooh, look at this. This already has an active maintenance request. So this lets you know before you submit one, has someone else already submitted one. But that was for a light, so I'm going to click OK to go ahead and create that new request. And now that maintenance request has been created. Now, when I go through, you know, if my field technician were to log in, I can actually update the request of that state. So I'm going to update it. And so it's not new. Let's actually change it to an in progress. And now I'm going to click OK. And now what I can do is I can create a new work order. So this is just a request. Now we're actually creating the work order of sending, this is what's going to let our dispatch team know what they need to send out a field tech for. So if we come here, we see all of that information was carried right over. And the inspection job type, let's say, let's drop down. And we're going to do it as an inspection. Okay, so everything else looks good. I'm going to click OK. And now you can see all of our open work orders. And here we go. We have our noise in the metal detector. So now what we want to do is let's actually click in this work order. And if we wanted to adjust it, you can see all of our different things. So if we wanted to add any type of work that we've done to it. And so from the work order menu right here, we can see all of our different general options. So if we have any, we need to purchase anything. But what I want to do is I actually want to schedule this work order. And so I can make sure that I am going to have the right assets into it, what tools, as well as the worker. So we'll come back to our work order tab right here. All right, and here we go. Now we have all of our open work orders, including the one that we just created. Now, depending on how you manage your scheduling or your dispatch, this would then be added to your scheduler's board, and then they can select the appropriate technician who has the electrical background or the certifications to work on this work order. And then it'll let them know what tools, what they need to bring, anything really necessary for this work order.
In this case, we created a work order for a corrective issue. However, you could also set up work orders for preventative maintenance, and these can be based off of a set schedule. But there you have it. That actually wraps up Module 2 for supply chain management inside of Dynamics 365. I know we covered a lot of information today, but the good news is that you're going to have the rest of the day to digest it all. But don't you worry, the fun isn't over yet. We still have 4 more modules in the Finance and Operation apps that we're going to be covering in Part 2. But if you want, you can actually go back and review any of the sections from today because, remember, you have full access to the learning path at aka.ms/mb920. Again, that's aka.ms/mb920. And this is a great learning path. There's videos and extra documentation and that sandbox environment where you can actually log in and try out these apps for yourself. And there are knowledge check questions at the end of each lesson, which is perfect for those of you who are prepping for the MB920 exam. But that's all I have for you today. However, I will see you back here for Part 2 when we cover the rest of the Finance and Operation apps inside of Dynamics. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.